The hospital room was painfully quiet, the kind of silence that feels heavier than noise. A 6-month-old baby lay motionless on the bed, his tiny chest rising and falling with effort, each breath weaker than the last. Machines surrounded him, blinking lights and slow beeps marking time. Not hope. Doctors had tried everything. Advanced medicine. Emergency procedures. Last resort treatments. Nothing worked. One doctor finally lowered his head and spoke the words every parent fears. "We've done all we can." The baby's mother collapsed into a chair, clutching her son's blanket. His father stood frozen, staring at the monitors, praying for even one sign, one movement, one miracle. But miracles don't come easily. And in that moment, it felt like time had already made its decision. Outside the room, nurses whispered. Staff avoided eye contact. Everyone knew what came next. Then something unexpected happened. Down the hallway, a familiar voice echoed softly, calm, confident, unmistakable. A man was visiting another patient, speaking kindly, laughing quietly. Someone recognized him and whispered a name that didn't belong in a hospital, yet somehow did. Muhammad Ali. The champion. The fighter. The man who never stopped believing in impossible comebacks. Ali paused when he heard about the baby. A child fighting for his life. A fight that looked unwinnable. He stopped smiling. Without cameras. Without reporters. Without anyone asking him to. He turned toward the room where hope had already begun to fade. No one knew why he walked in. No one expected what would happen next. Doctors assumed it was just another visitor paying respects before the end. Another quiet goodbye. But Ali didn't come to say goodbye. He stood there, looking at a child who couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't fight in any way the world recognized. And yet, something in Ali's eyes changed. In the boxing ring, Muhammad Ali was known for knocking out giants in seconds. But no one, not the doctors, not the parents, not history itself, was prepared for what he was about to do in just 30 seconds. 30 seconds that would challenge everything medicine believed. 30 seconds that would leave trained professionals speechless. 30 seconds that would turn a dying moment into a story the world would never forget. This wasn't about fame. This wasn't about boxing. This was about belief. And a fight no one thought could be won. The hospital corridors were already awake when the sun hadn't fully risen. It was one of those mornings where everything felt rushed, nurses moving quickly, doctors speaking in low, urgent voices, families waiting with fear written on their faces. Inside room 317, time felt different. The 6-month-old baby lay wrapped in a thin blanket, his tiny hands barely curling, his breath shallow and uneven. Every rise of his chest felt like it might be the last. The machines beside him did most of the work now, breathing for him, monitoring what little strength his body had left. The parents hadn't slept. They couldn't. The mother sat inches from the bed, whispering prayers over and over, even though her voice had grown hoarse. The father stood by the window, fists clenched so tightly his knuckles had turned white. He had asked every question a parent could ask, and heard every answer no parent wants to hear. "We're running out of options." That sentence echoed in his head like a sentence passed by a judge. Doctors came in and out of the room, checking vitals, adjusting tubes, exchanging looks that said more than words ever could. No one wanted to say it out loud, but everyone knew the truth. This wasn't about treatment anymore. It was about time. Down the hall, unaware of the silent countdown happening in room 317, Muhammad Ali had come to the hospital for a different reason. He was there to visit a close friend recovering from surgery. There were no cameras following him. No entourage. Just a simple jacket, quiet footsteps, and the same presence that had once filled arenas. Ali moved slowly, greeting staff, thanking nurses, smiling the way only someone who understood struggle truly could. He had fought battles the world could see, but he had also fought battles no one ever televised. As he spoke with a nurse near the desk, he noticed the mood shift nearby. Voices lowered. Faces tightened. A doctor stepped out of a room and paused, hands on his hips, staring at the floor. Ali asked a simple question. "What's going on?" The nurse hesitated, then answered quietly. "A baby. 6 months old. He's not doing well." Ali didn't respond right away. He listened as the nurse explained the situation. The failing lungs, the treatments that hadn't worked, the parents who were slowly being prepared for goodbye. With every word, Ali's expression changed. The smile faded. The humor disappeared. He nodded once. "I'd like to see him." The nurse looked surprised. "Sir, the family." "I won't disturb them," Ali said softly. "I just want to stand with them." Before we go further, take a moment. Backhand index pointing right if stories like this matter to you. Subscribe now so you don't miss the ones that remind us why humanity still matters. Ali stopped outside room 317. The door was slightly open. He could hear quiet crying inside. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing against him like an invisible force. He took a breath. Then he stepped inside. The parents looked up, confused at first. This wasn't the time for visitors. This wasn't the time for autographs or fame. Then recognition hit them. Not excitement, not awe, just disbelief. Ali didn't introduce himself. He walked slowly toward the crib and looked down at the baby. No flashing lights. No speeches. No drama. Just a man standing in front of a fight bigger than any ring he had ever entered. Speech balloon, tell me in the comments. Where are you watching from? And do you believe belief itself can be powerful? Ali placed his hands gently on the edge of the crib. And in that moment, something inside the room began to shift. The room felt smaller the moment Muhammad Ali stood beside the crib. No one spoke. The soft hum of machines filled the space, oxygen flowing, monitors ticking, a steady reminder that life here was being borrowed second by second. The baby lay still, eyes closed, skin pale beneath the hospital lights. His chest rose unevenly, each breath assisted, each moment fragile. The parents didn't know what to feel. They weren't thinking about championships or fame. In that moment, Muhammad Ali wasn't a legend. He was simply another human standing near their child. Another witness to the fear they had been drowning in for days. A doctor stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Mr. Ali," he said gently, choosing his words carefully, "we appreciate your concern. But I need to be honest with you." Ali turned to face him, calm and attentive. "This child is extremely critical," the doctor continued. "We've exhausted every medical option available to us. Right now, our focus is on keeping him comfortable." Comfortable. The word landed heavy. Ali nodded slowly. He had heard similar words before, not in hospitals, but in locker rooms, in quiet corners after fights when trainers spoke softly, preparing a fighter for defeat. He looked back at the baby. "How long?" Ali asked. The doctor hesitated. "Minutes, maybe an hour. It's unpredictable." The mother covered her mouth, tears spilling freely now. The father stepped closer to the crib, placing a trembling hand near his son's tiny fingers. Ali closed his eyes for a brief moment. In his mind, memories surfaced, fights where he was told he couldn't win, moments when the world had already written the ending. He remembered the voices that said he was finished. He remembered the nights when belief was the only thing he had left. He opened his eyes again. "May I speak to him?" Ali asked. The doctor looked uncertain. "Sir, he can't hear you. He's sedated." Ali met his gaze. "Maybe. But maybe not." The doctor sighed. He glanced at the parents. They didn't object. At this point, nothing felt impossible or too strange anymore. Ali leaned closer to the crib. He didn't touch the baby at first. He simply studied his face, the curve of his cheeks, the tiny lashes resting against his skin. A life so new, already being asked to fight harder than most adults ever would. Ali lowered his voice. "Hey there, little man," he whispered. Nothing happened. No movement. No change in the monitors. The doctor shifted uncomfortably. A nurse folded her arms, unsure whether to watch or look away. This wasn't medicine. This wasn't science. This was something else, something no textbook had prepared them for. Ali leaned closer. "You're tired," he said softly. "I know you are. But listen to me." The baby remained still. Ali continued anyway. "I've been in fights where everyone thought I was done. Where they said, 'He can't get up. He's finished.'" He paused, his voice steady, grounded. But champions don't listen to that. Champions dig deep. They find something inside that says, "Not today." The father's breathing grew uneven. The mother clutched the crib rail, tears dripping silently onto the blanket. Ollie spoke again. "You're a champion too. I can see it. You're small, yeah, but don't let anyone fool you. The biggest fighters don't always look strong." A nurse glanced at the monitor. Still flat. Still slow. Ollie didn't raise his voice. He didn't dramatize the moment. He spoke the way a coach speaks in the final round, calm, precise, full of belief. "Listen to your mama. She needs you. Your daddy needs you. The world hasn't seen you yet." The doctor checked his watch. Time was slipping. Ollie leaned even closer now, his voice barely above a whisper. "Breathe, champ. Just one breath. Show them you're still here." For a moment, nothing. The silence stretched. Then the monitor made a sound that didn't belong. A slight change in rhythm. A small, unexpected spike. The nurse froze. "Did you see that?" The doctor stepped closer to the screen. Ollie didn't stop speaking. "That's it," he said softly. "That's my boy. Again. One more." The baby's chest moved, barely, but undeniably. The room held its breath. Something was happening. Not a miracle yet. Not an answer. But a crack in the wall everyone thought was unbreakable. And Muhammad Ali kept talking. Time did something strange in that room. It didn't stop, but it stretched. Every second felt heavier than the one before it, as if the air itself was waiting to see what would happen next. The machines continued their steady hum, but now everyone in the room was listening to them differently. Not as background noise, but as a verdict being rewritten in real time. Muhammad Ali stayed close to the crib. His voice never shook. "Good," he whispered. "That's it. You're doing great." The baby's chest rose again, shallow, uncertain, but real. A breath that wasn't forced by a machine. A breath that came from somewhere deep inside a body everyone had already counted out. The nurse stared at the monitor. "I'm seeing spontaneous respiration," she said, almost afraid to believe it. The doctor stepped closer, eyes locked on the numbers. He didn't speak. He didn't blink. Ali kept going. "You see. You're stronger than they think. Stronger than you think." He leaned in just enough that only the baby could hear him. "When I was in the ring, they told me I was finished. They told me to stay down. But I didn't listen. I got up. Every time." Another breath. This one deeper. The heart monitor jumped again, not dramatically, not wildly, but enough to make every trained professional in that room straighten their posture. The mother gasped and pressed her hand to her mouth. "Oh my God!" The father whispered his son's name like a prayer, like a lifeline being thrown across a dark sea. Ali's words came steadily now, not rushed, not desperate. "Easy, champ. Nice and slow. You don't have to prove anything. Just stay with us." The doctor motioned quietly to a nurse, who adjusted a setting on the ventilator. They weren't taking over, they were responding. Following the baby's lead. 30 seconds. That's all it was. But inside those 30 seconds, something shifted. Ali spoke of courage without using the word. He spoke of strength without shouting. He spoke as if the baby could understand every syllable, not with the mind, but with something older and deeper. "Your fight isn't over," he said. "You've got a whole life waiting." Another breath. Then another. The monitor now showed a pattern no one had expected to see again. The nurse whispered, "He's stabilizing." The doctor swallowed hard. "Keep watching." Ali placed his hand gently on the edge of the crib, not touching the baby, just close enough to be felt. "That's it," he murmured. "You're not alone. You never were." 30 seconds ended. Ali stopped speaking. The room stayed silent, as if afraid that sound might undo what had just happened. Then the baby let out the faintest sound. Not a cry. Not a scream. Just a soft, fragile noise. Proof of presence. Proof of life. The mother broke down completely, her knees giving way as she held onto the side of the crib. Nurses rushed to support her, but she never took her eyes off her child. The father exhaled for the first time in what felt like days. The doctor finally spoke. I don't understand this. No one did. The machines showed improvement, modest, but undeniable. Oxygen levels were climbing. Heart rate steadied. The crisis that had been measured in minutes was now uncertain. Ollie stepped back. He didn't raise his hands. He didn't smile proudly. He didn't look for acknowledgement. He simply nodded once, as if confirming something he had already known. "That's all I came to do," he said quietly. The doctor turned to him. "Mr. Ollie, whatever you just did." Ollie shook his head gently. "I didn't do anything." He looked at the baby one last time. He did. As Ollie walked toward the door, the staff remained frozen, not in shock, but in something closer to awe. Years of training hadn't prepared them for this moment. For the reminder that medicine, for all its power, doesn't own every answer. At the doorway, Ollie paused. He turned back, his voice low but firm. "Don't ever tell a fighter the fight is over, while he's still breathing." Then he left. And behind him, in a room that had been preparing for goodbye, life quietly chose to stay. For several seconds after Muhammad Ali left the room, no one moved. Not the doctors. Not the nurses. Not the parents. The only thing that dared to break the silence was the steady, undeniable sound of the monitor, a rhythm that had no business being there just minutes ago. Beep, beep, beep. The doctor was the first to react. "Check the oxygen saturation again," he said, his voice controlled but tight. A nurse leaned in, eyes locked on the screen. "It's climbing, slowly, but it's climbing." "That's not possible," another nurse whispered. "It was crashing." The doctor stepped closer to the crib, examining the baby with the kind of focus usually reserved for medical journals and courtroom testimony. He checked the tubes, the settings, the readings, looking for error, for coincidence, for anything that could explain what had just happened. There was none. The baby's breathing, though still weak, was now partially his own. The ventilator wasn't doing all the work anymore. The child's chest moved with effort, with resistance, with intention. The mother reached out, afraid to touch, afraid to believe. Is he really breathing?" The doctor didn't answer right away. "Yes," he finally said. "He is." The word hit the room like a wave. Breathing. Not saved. Not cured. But breathing. The father sank into a chair, hands covering his face as a sound escaped him that was half laugh, half sob. The kind of sound a person makes when they've been holding themselves together with sheer will, and that will finally cracks. Nurses moved quickly now, adjusting support, recording numbers, calling in another physician. The energy in the room had changed completely. Where there had been resignation, there was now urgency. Where there had been quiet preparation for loss, there was renewed effort. One doctor entered, scanning the situation. "What did I miss?" The first doctor didn't know how to answer. "You missed," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "something I can't explain yet." They reviewed the charts together. There had been no new medication. No change in procedure. No intervention that matched the timing of the improvement. Except one. A voice. 30 seconds of words spoken to a child who wasn't supposed to hear. The senior doctor leaned back slightly, shaking his head. "I've been doing this for 25 years, he said quietly. "I don't believe in miracles." He looked at the monitor again. "But I believe in facts. And this is happening." The baby let out another faint sound, stronger than before. His fingers curled slightly, a small reflex that sent a nurse rushing to the crib. "Movement," she said. "We're getting movement." The mother cried openly now, no longer trying to stay quiet, no longer afraid of hope. The father stood and leaned over the crib, his tears falling freely. "We're here," he whispered to his son. "We're right here." Outside the room, word began to spread. Staff whispered to each other in hallways. Nurses paused mid-step. A few had seen Muhammad Ali walk in earlier, calm, unannounced, unrecorded. Now they were asking questions. What did he do? Did he touch the baby? Was it prayer? Was it coincidence? No one had an answer. The doctor documented everything carefully. Every number. Every timestamp. Every change. This wasn't a story to be told casually. This was something that would be reviewed, questioned, and debated. But no chart could capture what the room had felt like. No medical language could explain the moment when hopelessness had cracked, not slowly, but suddenly. Before we continue, I want to hear from you. Speech balloon comment below. Do you believe belief itself can affect the human body? Or was this something else entirely? Hours passed. The baby remained critical, but stable. The danger wasn't gone. No one claimed victory. But the downward spiral had stopped. Late that evening, the doctor gathered the parents. He's not out of danger, he said honestly. But he's alive. And right now, that matters more than anything. The mother nodded, holding her child's tiny hand. Who was that man? She asked softly. The doctor looked toward the door Ollie had walked through earlier. A fighter, he said. In more ways than one. And somewhere in that hospital, without knowing it, a legend had left behind something greater than fame. He had left behind a question that medicine still struggles to answer. Morning light crept softly through the hospital blinds, touching the walls of room 317 in a way that felt almost unfamiliar. For the first time in days, the room didn't feel like a place of endings. It felt like a place that was waiting. The baby slept. Not the restless, shallow sleep of a body in crisis, but the fragile, careful rest of a child whose system was finally beginning to cooperate. His breathing was still assisted, still monitored, still watched closely. But it was steady. And steady was something no one in that room had dared to hope for before. The night shift nurses passed along updates with cautious optimism. Oxygen levels had held. Heart rate remained stable. There had been no sudden drops, no alarms screaming into the dark. Progress. Small, slow, undeniable progress. The parents sat close together now. The mother rested her head against the father's shoulder, exhaustion finally catching up with her. The father held her hand, his grip gentler than before, no longer bracing for impact, but holding on. Doctors rotated in and out, each one studying the chart with the same quiet disbelief. They spoke carefully, avoiding dramatic language. No one wanted to promise too much. But no one could ignore the truth. The baby was still here. Later that afternoon, the lead physician gathered the parents in a small consultation room. Sunlight filled the space, and for the first time, no one rushed to speak. We're seeing signs of neurological response, he said. Reflexes. Muscle tone. All within expected range given what he's been through. The mother's eyes filled again, this time not from fear, but from release. So, he's going to live? She asked. The doctor paused. He has a long road ahead, he said honestly. But yes, we believe he has a future. Those words landed gently, like something fragile being placed into open hands. Later that day, the ventilator settings were reduced. The baby took more of his breaths on his own. Nurses smiled when they thought no one was looking. One of them whispered, "You're a tough little guy, aren't you?" The father nodded. He gets that from his mom. They laughed, quietly, carefully, the kind of laughter that feels earned. Muhammad Ali never returned to the room. There were no follow-ups. No interviews. No statements. The parents asked about him. They wanted to thank him, to show him what his presence had done. The staff explained that he had already left the hospital that day, quietly, without telling anyone. That was his way. But his absence didn't erase his presence. Doctors talked about the case in hushed tones. Not as a miracle to be claimed, but as a moment to be respected. Some tried to explain it scientifically: adrenaline response, neurological stimulation, coincidence layered on coincidence. Others simply shook their heads. One senior nurse said it best. Whatever it was, she said, it mattered. Days passed. The baby was moved out of intensive care. Tubes were removed one by one. The first time he cried loudly, the sound echoed down the hallway, and staff stopped to listen. That cry was proof. The parents took photos, not for social media, not for attention, but because they needed to remind themselves this was real. That this wasn't something they had imagined during exhaustion and grief. One afternoon, the father sat alone beside the crib, watching his son sleep. He thought about the man who had walked in during the darkest moment of their lives, calm, confident, unafraid of the impossible. A man who didn't demand recognition, who didn't explain himself, who didn't stay to watch the outcome. He understood something then. True strength doesn't announce itself. True belief doesn't wait for permission. The doctor later noted the case in a private journal, not as a miracle, not as a lesson, but as a reminder. A reminder that medicine treats the body. But hope speaks to something deeper. And sometimes, that's enough to keep the fight going. Some stories don't end when the crisis is over. They stay with us. Long after the hospital room grows quiet. Long after the machines are unplugged. Long after life moves on. This was one of those stories. A 6-month-old baby lived, not because science failed, but because humanity showed up. Not because medicine stopped working, but because belief stepped in when logic had reached its limit. Muhammad Ali didn't perform a miracle. He didn't claim credit. He didn't explain what happened. He didn't ask anyone to believe in anything specific. He simply did what he had done his entire life. He believed in the fight. In the ring, Ali understood something most people never do, that the body often gives up only after the mind has already surrendered. That strength isn't always loud. That courage isn't always visible. And in that hospital room, the rules were the same. The baby couldn't speak. He couldn't understand language. He couldn't throw punches or stand up or defend himself. But he could feel. He could feel presence. He could feel intention. He could feel someone refusing to accept that his story was already over. That matters. Because at some point in life, we all become that baby. Helpless. Overwhelmed. Surrounded by people who mean well but don't know what else to try. And sometimes, all it takes is one person who doesn't walk away. This story isn't about fame. It isn't about boxing. It isn't even about Muhammad Ali. It's about what happens when we treat human beings like fighters instead of statistics. Doctors saved that baby with skill and dedication, and they deserve every ounce of respect. But Ali reminded everyone in that room of something just as important. Hope isn't unscientific. Belief isn't weakness. And words can carry more power than we realize. Backhand index pointing right. If stories like this move you, subscribe now. These are the kinds of stories that remind us who we are. The baby grew stronger. The parents carried this moment with them for the rest of their lives. And the hospital staff never forgot what they witnessed. Not because it defied medicine, but because it expanded their understanding of it. So the next time you think your words don't matter, the next time you think belief is pointless, the next time you think showing up won't change anything, remember this story. Remember that a man once spent 30 seconds speaking life into someone who couldn't answer back, and those seconds became the difference between goodbye and tomorrow. Speech balloon. Type respect in the comments if you believe humility and kindness are real strength. Speech balloon, and tell me where you're watching from. I want to thank every kind soul personally. Because in a world full of noise, true power is quiet. And sometimes, it sounds like a whisper telling someone to keep fighting.